Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada and all goes to Guru Maharaj. And I have no qualification to really speak on this subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Whatever I could speak is the mercy of Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and other speakers, senior Vaishnavas spoke on these subjects. I seek blessings of all the Vaishnavas, dear Guru Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada and our deities, Shishya Nitai Gaur Chandra, so that I can speak something which is beneficial to others and also bring some transformation in me. So that recite prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunadhanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Rindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskrityam Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Utirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistukim Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 26, titled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, Text 6. Evam parabhidyaya dhyanena katvam prakrite puman karmasu kriyamaneshu gunair atmani manyate. Synonyms. Evam, in this way. Para, other. Abhidhyanena, by identification. Kartvam, the performance of activities. Prakrite, of the material nature. Puman, the living entity. Karmashu kriyamaneshu, while the activities are being performed. Gunai, by the three modes. Atmani, to himself. Manyate, he considers. Translation. Because of his forgetfulness, the transcendental living entity accepts the influence of material energy as his field of activities, and thus actuated, he wrongly applies the activities to himself. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The forgetful living entity can be compared to a man who is under the influence of disease and has become mad, or to a man haunted by ghosts who acts without control and yet thinks himself to be in control. Under the influence of material nature, the conditioned soul becomes absorbed in material consciousness. In this consciousness, whatever is done under the influence of the material energy is accepted by the conditioned soul as self-actuated. Actually, the soul in his pure state of existence should be in Krishna consciousness. When a person is not acting in Krishna consciousness, he is understood to be acting in material consciousness. Consciousness cannot be killed, but the symptoms of the living entity is consciousness. The material consciousness simply has to be purified. One becomes liberated by accepting Krishna or the Supreme Lord as master, and by changing the mode of consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. So we are doing here in the chapter 24, Kardam Muni seeks permission from Lord Kapila for renouncement, and after the permission, Lord Kapila speaks the purpose of his appearance, and also instructs Kardam Muni to proceed with his renunciation as per his desire, and to see always Lord in his heart, and also he'll describe the knowledge of the same knowledge to his mother, so she could also attain perfection. So with that, like Kardam Muni leave to forest for renunciation. And in the last chapter 25, where at Bindu Sarovar, I think Lord Kapila stayed to satisfy his mother, and during his stay, the conversation happens between Mother Devahuti and Lord Kapila. And Devahuti asks Lord Kapila to dispel her illusion of Aham Mameti. And she explicitly says, like, material attachments are causing disturbances to her, and she accepts him as a spiritual master and ask him to clarify, dispel her illusion. So as part of it, Lord Kapila starts explaining the details of yoga, Sankhya Yoga, and in the last chapter he explained in detail Bhakti Yoga, and in this chapter he started explaining Sankhya Sankhya philosophy, like where about the material nature and how the relationship between Prakriti, Jiva and Purusha, and their activities and their qualities and stuff. So, and this chapter, Lord Kapila started with explaining the mainly benefits of hearing the Sankhya. So three benefits. What he says is like one is freed from influence of material modes, and attains perfection of self-realization, and cuts the knot of attachment to the material world. So, and later text, like in the section where Lord Kapila is explaining about the characteristics and interactions of Jiva, Prakriti and Purusha. In that section, first Lord Kapila explains the characteristics of the Lord as Anadir, without beginning, and he is a supreme soul, and he is Nirguna, transcendental to material nature, and Prakriti Para, beyond material world. Swayam Jyoti is self-effulgent, and he's perceivable everywhere. And Vishwamyena Samanvitam, entire creation is maintained by him. And then he says, like, Lord interacts with the material energy at his will, uh, at his own will, and because of his interaction, those three modes are created. And and later we are coming to this text where they're talking about the forgetfulness, because the living entity gets under the illusion of these material modes. And towards end of the purport, Prabhupada mentioned this too, like material consciousness simply has to be purified, and one becomes liberated by accepting Krishna or the Supreme Lord as master, and by changing the mode of consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. I was actually contemplating on my current situation of my Krishna consciousness or my sadhana, and this verse gives me some clues. This where Prabhupada mentions in that purport, saying that like one has to be in the Krishna consciousness. If he is not in the Krishna consciousness, means he is in the material consciousness. And also, like we always hear in many lectures or many sessions where they say that do all your activities for Krishna, and Krishna is. But I'm thinking like in my case, because I feel like at this time, I kind of separated my activities like the material life or the spiritual life, and trying to juggle between the things and not finding the balance, what is right or wrong. And so in the same context, like I was hearing one of the lectures from my Guru Maharaj, and he was saying uh, every step what we take is a danger light at every step if we are not careful uh, and in our practices. A slight lenience all could give a way for Maya to take us fully. So in the same context, like he was comparing Maya to the generally the material world, the countries, the way they send the spies to other countries to figure out what's going on and all those things, right? So he was mentioning it's easy to deal with or fight with the enemy who is straightly standing in front of us, and we can win. But when there is a spy who is acting as one of us, and it's very hard to fight with them, because they get to know most of our moves and what we're going to do next and all that stuff. So in that text, like we have to be, so Maharaj is suggesting that we have to be very vigilant in every step of bhakti practices. Otherwise, Maya, the energy of the Lord, knows all our weaknesses and sure will take over even without we realize what happened. So, and in the same context, like how Maya creates this illusion for us, the bhajan Bhajahure Mana by Govindas explains the deep attachments, and also he suggests that get involved in that 9 process of bhakti. So I think I'll just read the translations. O mind, just worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which makes one fearless. Having obtained this rare human birth, cross over this ocean of worldly existence through the association of saintly persons. Both in the day and night, I remain sleepless, suffering the pains of the heat and cold, the wind and the rain. For a fraction of flickering happiness, I have uselessly served wicked and miserly men. What assurance of real happiness is there in all of one's wealth, youthfulness, sons, and family members? The life is tottering like a drop of water on the lotus petal. Therefore, you should always serve and worship the divine feet of Lord Hari. It is the desire and great longing of Govindadasa to engage himself in the nine process of bhakti. So similarly, there is another bhajan which was written in Telugu by um, Annamacharya or from his descendants. It's in the similar lines, and so basically it starts with same thing like, what's the fruit of this human life you have presented to me among the 8.4 million life forms? I'm your devotee alone, and what you do with me is totally up to your wish. He starts with that. And then finally he says like how he gets sucked into this material engagement, forgetting all about the Krishna consciousness, like the Lord. And finally he ends with, I can see you before my eyes, Lord Venkateshwara. Also you exist within me, as you are all pervading. And looking at my helplessness with dealing of the world of Maya you created, you laugh at me. I am your devotee. Is this Maya necessary for me? I plead for your mercy and to let me free from this Maya so I can realize the true meaning of this human life, to chant your name and reach you on the path of salvation. I'm sure like in the other Vaishnava philosophies also similar bhajans will be there, but overall like the Maya is very strong and which can take over us any time, like if we are not really conscious of our practice or an efforts in the practicing of Krishna consciousness. And practicing bhakti is a continuous and continuous conscious effort. So for this, like if we take an example of students, or if someone is preparing for the exam, I'm sure like someone could prepare in the last minute and get past the exams, but in order to ideally to understand the concepts and do it better, they have to prepare the whole long year. The students have to prepare, and at the end of the year, like they'll have like 2 or 3 hours to pass that test and get to the next stage. Similarly, all living entities, especially who are in the form of human, is for a higher purpose, and and the test for the human form is to remember Krishna at the last breath to attain his abode. So at least in the case of students, they have a date, they know that when the exam is going to happen, so at least they can prepare themselves. But for all other living entities, though the material nature is created us, it does not give any expiry date the way companies print on the packages for the food and medicines, like best before use or something. So it has to be a continuous conscious effort. We need to make it so not to get into that forgetful stage. So, and in general, we hear in the world, like at least it happened to me, and for sure it would have happened to many others. Like when I wanted to get into Krishna consciousness and take the first step of initiation. So most of my friends and relatives were like saying that why you're not there yet. You have still a long life, so you still have to work, and then you have things are there. So these things need to be done at the after the retirement or something. But question is, what are the chances that I would accept spirituality uh, after retirement? That's like after 60 plus, where I spent like the last 30, 40 years doing this material enjoyment, struggling with the material world. So, and besides all of this, like what's the guarantee that I'll be alive until that age? So it's very hard. So every day, and every day there are many living entities or the human beings are leaving this world to get onto their next stage, whatever it is, right? And they all would, no one would have thought that, okay, today is my last day. I want to be ready for Krishna to come and take me, unless until a great saint, so they can decide like when they want to leave their bodies. But yeah, so and then like another place, like I think Guru Maharaj was mentioning that we have to be humble. So when we are humble, that humbleness will bring in more caution in our actions, what we do. So we be careful. So in the similar lines, I'm thinking that okay, when we have the pride that I'm great, and we get into that overconfidence, and we show our arrogance, thinking that I'm invincible, until that day comes where it get proven that I'm not one of them. So, and just to conclude, somehow by the mercy of devotees and Krishna, I got into the Krishna conscious process to get out of that forgetfulness state. And if I'm not putting conscious efforts to surrender to Krishna, there is every chance that the material energy of Krishna would never hesitate to bring me down to that state of forgetfulness state again. So when we get into that state, when I get into that state, so it is done. So it's again another just a thought popped up in my brain, so just to extend, right? So Prabhupada gave many tools for us to practice in the Krishna consciousness, like chanting and four regulative principles, hearing, reading Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and all that stuff. So one thing I was thinking, based on my weaknesses, and human life is meant, like, prefers to be like a variegatedness, like a lot of changes, or when things gets routine, I get like very lenient and easy going. It's okay, we'll do it. I'll do it later. So I'll do it tomorrow. The procrastination and all that stuff. Uh, but I think like by creating a little bit challenging, or making interested, like the way in the kindergarten and the preschool, or in the early stage of education, the way children and the parents, not children, teachers and the parents make the education is fun way for the children. The similar way we should make it like a little bit challenging ourselves, so that we can push ourselves and we can be always in the continuous thought of Krishna to get better at it. So when we have challenges, I feel like it's a little bit easier, like though we try to solve things by ourselves, but at some stage we would realize, okay, means it's out of my control. So I need to get the help or surrender to Krishna. So I think that might help bring us and remember Krishna in a continuously, consciously. So with that, I'll conclude, and I seek forgiveness in case if I misspoke anything or misrepresented or hurt anyone's feelings because of my ignorance and the limited knowledge. Would appreciate if anyone others could share their thoughts or any suggestions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the nice class this morning. I have a question regarding the last sentence that you said, that when we're in problem, we should take shelter of Krishna. But our tendency is that rather than taking shelter of Krishna first, we take shelter of our mind, our resources, and like we seek help outside. So is that the right approach, or we should just give things up and leave it up to Krishna, stay relaxed?
Yeah,
What should be the approach?
yeah, that's the reason I also mentioned that, like, yeah, at least at some point, like, we'd realize that, okay, it's out of my control. I need to surrender, right? Like, I mean, ideally, if we can get in the first place and if we can surrender to Krishna, that will be nice. But if not, at least since we are practicing Krishna consciousness for some time, at least at some point in the process, we would realize that, okay, it's out of my hand. I need to surrender to Krishna. I hope I answered, Mataji. But
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
okay, dear devotees, if anyone doesn't have any other thoughts or process, we'll close down. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo Krishna. Have a Krishna conscious day. Thank you.